Dr. Feynman, I want to start with something very simple. When people look up at the night sky and see all those stars, most of them probably think somewhere out there must be aliens. And maybe those aliens are coming here someday. Is that a crazy idea?
It's not crazy at all. In fact, it's one of the most natural thoughts a human being can have. You look up, you see hundreds of billions of stars, and you think, how can we possibly be alone? The instinct is completely reasonable. The universe is enormous. The probability that life exists somewhere else feels overwhelming. So no, the idea isn't crazy. What is crazy is what the physics says about whether those aliens could ever actually get here. That's where it gets genuinely disturbing.
Okay, so let's start there. Why is it so hard? I mean, we sent people to the moon, we have rockets. Why can't we just go farther?
I love that question because it shows exactly how our intuition fails us. See, the moon is about 384,000 kilometers away. Our rockets got us there in about 3 days. Beautiful. Now, the nearest star to our sun, a little star called Proxima Centauri, is 40 trillion kilometers away. Not 40 million, not 40 billion, 40 trillion. If you took the distance to the moon and laid it end to end, you would need to do that 100 million times to reach Proxima Centauri. Our fastest spacecraft ever launched, Voyager 1, is traveling at about 17 kilometers per second. At that speed, it would take roughly 75,000 years to reach Proxima Centauri. Not 75,000 days, years.
75,000 years, that's longer than human civilization has existed.
Much longer. Modern humans have been around for maybe 300,000 years, but civilization, cities, writing, science, that's only about 5,000 to 10,000 years old. So yes, we are talking about a journey that would take 15 times the entire recorded history of humanity just to reach the closest possible neighbor. And Proxima Centauri is our backyard. Most interesting stars are thousands of light years away. The scale of space is not just big. It is insultingly, almost personally big.
So what would it actually take to make that journey possible? Is there a speed we'd need to reach?
The gold standard is the speed of light, about 300,000 kilometers per second. Light from Proxima Centauri takes 4.2 years to reach us. So if you could travel at the speed of light, the trip takes 4.2 years. That sounds manageable, right? A little over 4 years, you pack some sandwiches, you go. The problem is that nothing with mass, no spaceship, no alien body, no particle of matter can reach the speed of light. This isn't a technology problem. This isn't something we solve with better engineering. It is a law of nature, as fundamental as anything we know. Einstein showed us why, and every experiment we've done in the last 100 years confirms it absolutely.
Why, though? Why can't anything reach light speed? What's actually stopping it?
Here is where it gets beautiful and terrible at the same time. As you accelerate an object, push it faster and faster, it requires more and more energy to keep accelerating. Not just more energy in a straight line, but exponentially more. As you get closer and closer to the speed of light, the energy required doesn't just grow, it approaches infinity. To actually reach light speed, you would need infinite energy. And the universe, generous as it is, does not have infinite energy to hand out to spacecraft. So light speed is a wall you can get close to, but never touch. Not ever.
Okay, so light speed is out. But what about getting close to light speed? Say half?
Now we're getting somewhere. Half the speed of light, 150,000 kilometers per second. That's a real target that physics doesn't forbid, just makes extraordinarily difficult. At half light speed, the trip to Proxima Centauri takes about 8.5 years one way. So your crew is in a ship for 17 years round trip. That's challenging, but survivable. The problem is fuel. There is a beautiful, brutal equation in rocketry, the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation. And what it tells you is this: the faster you want to go, the more fuel you need. And the fuel itself has mass, which means you need more fuel to accelerate the fuel, and more fuel to accelerate that fuel, and so on. For half the speed of light, the ratio of fuel to actual spacecraft becomes millions to one. Millions of kilograms of fuel for every single kilogram of ship. It's not engineering we need to improve. It's mathematics we need to escape, and mathematics doesn't negotiate.
I've heard about antimatter as a possible solution. Is that real science or science fiction?
It is absolutely real science, and it is the most seductive idea in propulsion physics. When matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other completely. Every single bit of mass converts to energy according to Einstein's equation E equals mc squared. No chemical rocket, no nuclear reactor comes close to that energy density. In principle, an antimatter rocket is the perfect engine. The fantasy version works magnificently. The reality version has one small problem. To make the trip to Proxima Centauri at high speed, you would need hundreds of tons of antimatter as fuel. The entire human civilization, every particle accelerator ever built on Earth, running every second since the moment civilization began, has produced approximately a few billionths of a gram of antimatter. Total. The gap between what we have and what we need is not a gap you close with a better budget or a smarter engineer. It's a gap of a factor of billions upon billions. And that's before we discuss storage. Antimatter cannot touch anything. Not the walls of a container. Not a single molecule of air. One tiny failure in your magnetic containment system, and your fuel becomes a bomb that vaporizes everything within kilometers.
That's terrifying. Are there other ideas? What about those warp drives from science fiction?
Oh, you mean the Alcubierre drive? Now here is a story I love because it shows how physics can tease you. In 1994, a physicist named Miguel Alcubierre took Einstein's equations, the same equations that describe black holes in the expanding universe, and he found a mathematical solution that describes something remarkable. A bubble of space that contracts in front of a spacecraft and expands behind it. The spacecraft sitting inside the bubble doesn't actually move through space at all. Space itself moves around it. And here's the beautiful part. There's no speed limit on the movement of space itself. The universe expanded faster than light in its earliest moments. So in principle, this drive could carry you anywhere faster than light without ever violating Einstein's laws. When Alcubierre published this, physicists everywhere got very excited for about 5 minutes.
What happened after 5 minutes?
They did the math more carefully. The drive requires something called exotic matter, not antimatter, something even stranger. Matter with negative energy density. Negative, as in less than zero. We have never observed such a thing in any meaningful quantity. Some quantum effects hint at tiny amounts of it, but the Alcubierre drive would need amounts comparable to the mass of Jupiter, but negative. And even if you somehow produce this impossible material, further analysis showed that you couldn't steer the drive from inside the bubble. The ship would be isolated from the universe, unable to send signals forward to control the contraction of space ahead. And then there is the radiation problem. The bubble accumulates high-energy particles as it travels, and when you decelerate, it releases them all at once in a burst that would instantly vaporize your destination. The universe gave us a door, and then bricked it shut from 4 different directions simultaneously.
It really does feel like the universe is designed to keep everything in place, like nature doesn't want things to travel between stars.
I understand that feeling completely, and I want to be careful here because it's a feeling that can lead you wrong. The universe isn't designing anything. It isn't trying to keep us contained. It's just following its own rules with absolute consistency. But the effect is the same. Every clever trick we imagine runs into a physical principle that was already there, waiting. And they're all connected. You try to go around one law and you bump into 2 others. The laws of physics are not a list of separate rules. They are a single, coherent argument. And you cannot insert a false premise without the whole argument noticing.
Let me ask you about something called the Fermi Paradox. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, and this is one of my favorite stories in all of science because it came from the most casual possible moment. It was 1950, and Enrico Fermi, one of the great physicists of the 20th century, the man who built the first nuclear reactor, was having lunch with some colleagues in Los Alamos. They were having a perfectly ordinary conversation, and at some point Fermi just looked up from his food and said, very simply, "Where is everybody?" That's it. That's the whole paradox. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. There are hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. Even if intelligent life is extraordinarily rare, the sheer numbers suggest there should be thousands, maybe millions of civilizations out there, some of them billions of years more advanced than us. A civilization with even a modest head start could have spread self-replicating probes across the entire galaxy in a few 100 million years. And yet silence. No signals, no visitors, no evidence of anything. We have searched, we have listened, nothing. Why?
What do scientists think the answer is?
There are many answers proposed, and honestly, none of them are satisfying, which is itself fascinating. One answer is what's called the great filter, the idea that there is some barrier, some step in the development of life or intelligence that almost nothing survives. Maybe it's behind us, maybe the hard part was getting from simple chemistry to complex life, and we already passed that miracle. Or maybe the filter is ahead of us. Maybe every civilization eventually destroys itself or hits a wall of physics exactly like the ones we've been discussing and simply never gets off their home world. That second possibility is quietly horrifying. It would mean the galaxy is full of civilizations that bloomed and wondered and reached toward the stars and then went dark, alone, never having touched another mind.
That's an incredibly lonely image.
It is. But here is the other side of that coin, and I want you to think about this carefully. If every civilization is truly isolated, if the physics really does wall everyone off in their own solar system, then what does that mean about us, right now, on this little warm rock? It means that every mind that ever had a thought, every scientist who ever made a discovery, every child who ever looked up at the sky and wondered, all of that happened in a bubble of isolation that was complete and total. And if that's true, then the things we do with our minds, the questions we ask, the understanding we build that isn't just personally valuable, it may be cosmically unique. We might be the only place in 100,000 light years where the universe is looking at itself and understanding what it sees.
That actually makes me feel more significant, not less. I didn't expect that.
Most people feel crushed when they hear about the scale of the universe. They feel small, and the scale is crushing. I won't pretend otherwise. But smallness isn't the conclusion. The conclusion depends on what else is true. And if the physics of interstellar travel really does mean that intelligent civilizations are islands, permanent islands, then the significance of each island is total, not partial, total.
Is there anything, any real possibility, not science fiction, where you think the door might still be open? Something we genuinely don't know yet?
Wormholes. I have to be completely honest with you. We have no evidence that wormholes exist. We have never observed one. We don't know how they would form. We don't know if they can be kept stable. We don't know how you would create one. But, and this is important, Einstein's equations of general relativity allow them. They appear as legitimate mathematical solutions to the equations that describe the shape of space-time. Einstein himself, working with Nathan Rosen in 1935, found these solutions. They're called Einstein-Rosen bridges. Whether they exist in nature, whether they can be traversed, whether they lead somewhere useful, genuinely unknown, and I find that not knowing more exciting than I find it frightening. Because not knowing means the question is still alive.
You seem very comfortable with not knowing things. Most experts I talk to seem uncomfortable admitting that.
Well, most experts are more concerned with appearing to know things than with actually understanding them. I made peace with not knowing a long time ago. Not knowing is not failure. Not knowing is the natural state of a person who is paying attention. The universe is under no obligation to be understandable to a collection of atoms that has been thinking for only a few thousand years. What would be truly strange is if we already had all the answers. The history of physics is a history of finding out that everything we thought we knew was a special case of something larger and stranger. Newton was right, but only until Einstein showed he was approximately right. Einstein was right, but we still don't know how to reconcile his equations with quantum mechanics, and that gap has been sitting there for 100 years. We are not done. We are nowhere near done. And interstellar travel sits right in the middle of that gap in the deep water where our current theories start to struggle.
Last question. If you could say one thing to a young person who is frustrated that we can't reach the stars, someone who feels like the universe is too big and physics is too cruel, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that in 1900, a serious, intelligent physicist named Lord Kelvin said that heavier-than-air flight was impossible. 3 years later, the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk. I would tell them that in the 1930s, serious people said atomic energy was a fantasy. I would tell them that every generation has a list of impossibilities, and every generation is eventually surprised. I am not saying we will crack interstellar travel. I genuinely do not know. But I am absolutely certain that the universe contains layers of reality we have not yet touched, things so foreign to our current understanding that we don't even have the language for them yet. The door to the stars may be locked, but we haven't found all the doors. And the people who find new doors are always the ones who refuse to believe the locked ones were the only ones. So my message to that young person is this: the universe is not finished with you yet, and you should not be finished with it.
Dr. Feynman, thank you. This has been extraordinary.
The pleasure was entirely mine. You asked good questions. Good questions are rarer than good answers, and much more valuable.